Gundam.tk presents High Grade Baqto. Hey again everybody, it's Robert184, 2 R's 2 B's from Gundam.tk, which is gundamreviews.net, where you can see all these reviews and more in one easy to find place. The High Grade Baqto, you've seen the unboxing and all the parts, all those plates are empty, which means it's time to turn it into the unidentified mobile suit that it is. When he's all put together, albeit without the wings, I just wanted to show you that. This guy has got to be my favorite UE suit based on looks, and I don't necessarily know why, except for the fact that the proportions look great, the colors, the two tones of green, and those orange parts along with the clear yellow, and the fact that his head looks different. This whole back section seems to work a lot better. He's balanced, unlike the Gafran, which his skinny legs don't really help stand him up without using this as a third point of support. In this case, this guy's got no issues standing up. And he looks great, and I can't help but think, is this not more Zaku 2-ish than the Gafran? For mobility, the lack of side skirts here is going to allow you to bring the legs all the way forward and off to the side. You're not going to get much more than that, but to be expected with just a polycap attachment. The knees are going to bend quite well. You could come back and kick some tail, I suppose. The ankles have a huge range of motion off to the side, and front to back, not bad, although they will bump into that front ankle armor. The upper body is going to allow the arms to go around there. The rotation point, you're going to be able to rotate it about that much. I suppose you can bring it all the way around if you don't mind knocking off the head. And because it's got that big part in the back, it's just going to be somewhat problematic. The elbow is going to give you that above 90. It's going to give you the 135. And if you wanted to bring it across by bending it like that, you could reach across and touch the shoulder, although you're not going to get it across that big, bulky, weaponized chest. Now, you just saw that head fall off there, and it's actually a little bit problematic to attach this on. This neck part here is going to bend, and that's going to be used in the transformation. You'll notice that it moves the tail ever so slightly when you do that. The head itself is going to be able to rotate all right, but it's actually on a polycap with a double ball joint on either end, and it just doesn't seem to have the amount of mobility that you'd expect compared to a lot of other mobile suits. That's as much as he can turn his head. It is a little bit of cheating though to do this stuff without the wings on, so you can just plug them in here to the back of the tail section and bend them forward. With the wings on, I think he changes quite a bit in terms of just the overall visual impact, and I have to say that it's somewhat detrimental. I think he looked better off without them. They're still not as big and ugly as the Gafrans as they come forward like that. Off to the side, of course, it's going to provide a lot of armor, which makes a lot of sense if you're involved in mobile suit combat. But in terms of pure looks, unless you're actually transforming this guy, I sometimes think he might be better off with these things just omitted. In terms of height comparison, the Baqto is a little bit taller than the Gafran, and you can just see how much more filled out he is with the big legs as opposed to the skinny ones. The smaller front skirts, these are only one piece. Remember that the Gafran has a poly gap here which allows them to rotate. That's a good and bad thing because it has more points of mobility, but it's harder to get them to line up. And I hope that you can see that the heads are ever so slightly different here. The arms and the shoulders don't look too different, except for the fact that this one has the extra paint apps, the tail being identical, and again, that black strip in the head, for me, is what's going to set this apart. But when I see green and blue, I can't help but think Zaku 2 and Goof, and if they didn't put them out in the wrong order in the anime. Here's the Baqto next to the Zetas, which appeared first, but seems to be much more of a stronger boss. Medium-sized legs on this guy. The skirts are very similar in that they don't have that second ball joint in there for that extra articulation. They both have two colors in the shoulders. The Zetas has the unique coloring in the hands, and what different coloration is in the back of the ankles. You don't see it, unlike what you do on the Baqto. So again, in terms of pure looks, I have to give the edge to this one. Will we see the Baqtos square off with the Sparrow? I wonder, but here you have a tall, skinny, lanky Gundam, very Gafran-ish, if you just look at the size of the overall body, compared to this one, which is much more of a match for the Titus. Who, ridiculous pose aside, certainly doesn't have the height on the Baqto, but he does have the bulk to go toe-to-toe. And this is just being silly. In terms of ground attacking poses, so far the ankles aren't going to have any problems getting where you need them to be. The legs don't spread that much because of the way they're mounted. And outside of bringing the tail over the shoulder, this guy's not going to have a lot of attacks that don't need an action base. Although he can somewhat awkwardly bring the tail/beam rifle forward, it's not going to fit into the hand as well as it does over the shoulder, but he can at least look down at his beam Vulcans similar to looking down the barrel of a beam rifle. Off the ground with an action base that's been borrowed from the Nobel Gundam, you can see that the legs are going to give you a few possibilities, but you're not going to be getting too many powerful striding motions. I suppose you could say that he's slashing there, and you can move the other arm around and at least cock it back, which is going to look pretty sharp. But so far, outside of using the tail as a forward shooting weapon, he's not going to be too dynamic, comes across much more as just a powerful tank. This is copying a pose on the side of the box where you're going to have the tail come under the legs, and that can look a little bit ridiculous. On the side of the box it looks a lot better just because of the angle that you look at this at, of course, is going to make it look somewhat more impressive as if it was coming down to attack the Titus from above. But in this case, the beam Vulcans and the bends at the knees, he just really doesn't have that agile nature to really pull off a pose like this unless you're using a lot of trick angles. On the plus side, even though I'm cheating with that hand just to keep the beam rifle in place, these wings over here are actually working better than I expected because they're very easy to move them out of the way of the leg poses, and they can still add just a dynamic aspect to it as if he was whooshing in space and those were opening and closing accordingly. The transformation, unexciting as it seems, is still worth checking out. And you're basically going to get this out of the way, bend the arms forward at 90-degree angles and swap the manipulators off to take off the ones with the beam Vulcans, and then it involves just opening up the head and bending everything back, including this whole neck piece, which is of course probably going to pop that off more often than not. The rest of the transformation is accomplished by just switching these parts around here on the beam rifle, just take some fiddling there with the tail, open up the legs by splitting those apart, and bend the wings up, and when you're all done, I have to give this a little bit of credit. I was thinking of it as a transformation more like the Gafran or something like that, and instead if you just think of it as just bending forward and he has a built-in Superman mode, I actually don't mind it all that much. Some of this is really helped by the fact that he's got that very interesting looking neck which shows off, including all those little details. You see parts exposed here in the tail that are just going to have a bunch of details, and to see those thruster veins down there in the legs, and the way that the head opens up, I'm actually going to give this more of a pass than I figured I would, and it's actually going to look like an effective way for you to fly at top speed into battle. So that'll wrap up my review of the mobile suit and transformation of this high-grade Baqto. Lots of good and bad things about it, so stay tuned for the next part to hear them all in one place. But what do you think? How do you think this guy compares in MS mode compared to those other two, or in transformation? And what about compared to the actual guys that he's fighting and the Federation? Anyway, I look forward to hearing from you with a comment down below. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the final part of the Baqto next time. Thanks for watching, everybody. See ya. How does flight mode work when you're flying right into this guy's fist? It's almost like you could do a little evolution recap of these guys.